Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I think we're creating podcast history in today's episode because I think this is the first time ever in over 650 episodes that we have an inventor on the show. Today's guest is an incredible entrepreneur, and yes, she has invented a product, which means she's gone through all of the parts of designing it, patenting it, manufacturing it, branding it, marketing it, and selling it on Amazon. I'm so excited about today's guest. Her name is Aimee Roberson. She graduated from the University of Southern California and worked in media relations in the motorcycle industry before becoming a full-time stay-at-home mom. 22 years later, when her youngest child went away to college and she became an empty nester, her husband and her decided not to make any big life changes for a year. But 5 months later, that big life change came in the form of COVID, which affected all of us. And it was then that she started her journey to become a business owner and entrepreneur, which led to her scratching her own itch. I love this part of every entrepreneur's story because she invented, patented, and brought to market a product called DryMeister under her company name, Meister Solutions. DryMeister is a drying tool that dries the inside of containers that you can't reach inside to dry. Things like reusable water bottles, wine glasses, baby bottles, hydration packs, vases, etc. Just about anyone can benefit from using DryMeister, which is why it's no surprise that Aimee's invention gets awesome reviews on Amazon. There's so much we're going to dive into today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Aimee Roberson. Aimee, holy cow, it hit me while I was doing the intro. I think you are the first inventor to come on the show. So officially, welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm really excited.
Heck yeah. So obviously 99% of listeners are listening to us, but if you are watching on video, you guys can see that I have Aimee's product here in my hands in the studio. It's an awesome product. It was very timely as I had my nephew in town. We were just going through water bottles, always washing them and running out the door for our next adventure. I loved using your product. But Aimee, give us the backstory to how you actually got here, because there's a lot we're going to dive into, but fill in those gaps for listeners. How did you get here?
Okay, well, I became a stay-at-home mom after I was working for a few years. And so I spent all those years, couple decades, raising my kids. We have 3 kids, 2 years apart. So it was a very busy time. And I think being organized was something that drove me every day to stay on top of things. I think that's just kind of a part of who I am. And so the kids graduated high school. We were finally empty nesters, and we kind of thought about the things we wanted to do. And should I go back to work? Do I want to volunteer? What do I want to do? And so we decided just to take a break, not make any big decisions for a year, and just let the new norm kind of set in. Which is kind of the funny part, because the new norm became a very different new norm, which is COVID. Our youngest daughter went to college, came home for spring break, and our next oldest daughter did as well. And they never went back because COVID hit. So they were here from March to August. And our whole family was here. We have an older son who was working from here. They were taking college classes from here. So we had a lot of extra time to do things. We exercised a lot. We tried different wines at night. And after we would work out, I think I was particularly conscientious of keeping things clean because of COVID. So we had our reusable water bottles, and I would wash them and dry them, and they would just sit on the counter. And one day I was staring at them and I thought, I'm so sick of looking at these things on the counter. So I'm just going to try to find something that dries them. Amazon was still up and running. So I looked and I couldn't find anything. I thought, surely there's got to be something that can dry these. So I looked and looked, couldn't find anything. Then I started thinking, well, maybe I'll try to do something. So then I looked at the Google patent search, and that's kind of how it all started, was just the realization that if nothing else, I just wanted to invent something for myself that worked.
Yeah, I love that overview, Aimee, because to me, it puts you in an elite class. There are so few people. Obviously, we could talk about there are millions of patents in the world, but in the grand scheme of society, so few people go from idea to execution. We've all had that quote unquote $1,000,000 idea where people are like, this product would be brilliant. But Aimee, you actually did it. Bridge that gap for us because you didn't have an entrepreneurial background up to that point. So not only did you think of it, not only did you stare at, we all leave those water bottles upside down and say, they'll dry out. You looked at that, identified the problem, had the idea, and then you said, no, I'm not just going to entertain this idea. I'm going to see it through to execution. Walk us through that. That's a big bridge to build.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't really realize what I was getting into. But it was really fun. And what was most interesting looking back is because it was during COVID, stores were closed. I didn't really have any resources. So I just had to tinker around with what was around the house. It was popsicle sticks and lollipop sticks and glue guns and anything I could find in the toolbox, paper towels, scrubbers. And so I just started, really the biggest thing to start with was, what is this thing going to look like? And how is it going to work? And I thought about, if I use a sponge to dry the inside of things, the problem with that is if it has a narrow opening and you pull it back out, it's going to squeeze into itself and the water's just going to drop back in. So the more I started kind of tinkering around with different ideas, which included all those materials, I realized this is kind of a bigger feat than I knew I was getting into. So I started cutting sponges and things into different shapes and got out a bunch of different water bottles. I had a lot of time to kill with everybody at home. So then I finally had something in my kitchen that I used in an ice bucket. It was actually a big scale of what I was doing. And that's what gave me the inspiration for the shape. And so that is, I don't know if your listeners are familiar, but it's like a fabric that you put between your pots and pans so they don't scratch each other. So that was my inspiration for the shape. So I put one of those, which is big, inside an ice bucket. And that's when I realized, okay, it bends into itself when it goes in and it comes out. And that's kind of what started the whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. And you and I have obviously exchanged emails before our session here today. So I have the benefit of, I saw some of your prototypes. You talk about just using what you had around the house to start building it. And now seeing those emails that you sent me and those attachments and images, which I love seeing, to now seeing the finished product, which is incredible. Yeah. Aimee, it doesn't look like a first time invention. It looks like a product that has been, on shelves and Bed Bath & Beyond and a million stores for a decade or more because the packaging is so good. The finish of the actual product, the handle of it, the branding that you have on it. It's just so incredible. Talk to us about that because you talk about not knowing what you don't know. I don't even know where I would turn. Okay, so you get a working prototype in place. What did you then start doing? Did you hit up other people who had invented products before? Did you just go for it on your own and started hitting up manufacturers? Walk us through that.
Okay, yeah, I totally went for it on my own. I built a pretty good team around me. I think one thing about being low budget inventor is that you have to be resourceful. So I really tried to build a good team around me. I hired a company that helped me take the design. We reviewed the design together. I worked with some industrial engineers and we confirmed that the design was going to work. So then from there, you start really fine tuning the design of the actual product. So it was then that, I could still go out of the house during COVID, but I would look at so many different things, different scrub brushes and handle shapes of all sorts of things. And I finally decided on the shape of the handle that I wanted. And then the length, you have to insert it into different things. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I don't want it to just fit into baby bottles, for example. And it works really well in baby bottles, but wine glasses as short as champagne glasses up to long, narrow vases. So the length was the next thing I tried to figure out. And then probably the second hardest thing was, how do you attach the drying head to the handle? So then you get into the mechanics of everything. And there's so many different ways to fasten two things together. So what I realized is the tried and true screw it on is what worked. So I decided to do a threaded drying head into a handle that had a threaded receptacle. So that was kind of where the design was going and just figuring that out. I am a perfectionist, I have to say. So, and I know that's a blessing and a curse, but I think for me, I was really insistent on keeping with the design, the plan, the down to millimeters. How many threads? Is it tight when it screws on? The ribbing on the handle. If anyone buys my product, they'll see every little thing on there took thought. And I love efficiency in everything. So I wanted it to be efficient, fun, and actually work. And leads me into the hardest part of this whole journey, probably, was finding the material. So as I mentioned, sponges are, I guess most people would think sponges would be the right material, but there's so many problems with that, or paper towels, or microfibers, or chamois. I've tried so many different things, but a lot of them you have to get wet before you use them. So I had to find something that you could package dry and it could get wet and you could reuse it. So you'll notice it says reusable yet disposable, because you can let it air dry in between uses and use it again. So there's some value there. It's not just a one and done. But I must have ordered at least 20 samples from all over the world, all over the country, trying to find a material that would do the job. That probably took 6 months, just that, and then testing it, and then finding the material, and then how many layers do I want? Do I want 12? Do I want 6, 10, 8? So many different configurations. So for inventing something, I think you have to be really patient, and you have to stick to your guns, because even my family around me, they were here watching me do all this, and, oh, Mom, don't worry about that. Oh, that's fine. But nothing was fine for me until it was perfect. And I think you get into the liability, you start thinking about who's using this, warnings on the packaging. So another thing I did was I hired a compliance attorney to make sure that anything that was written on the box was compliant. There would be no legal problems with it, because I'm putting something into the hands of people all over, and I want to make sure I'm not claiming it does something that it doesn't do. So that's another team member there. And then I used a company it's an online service called Upwork, and I found specialists there to help me with different things. So I just made sure I was surrounding myself with people that were efficient as well, and that they could understand what my expectations were. And I wanted to make sure I understood what their deliverables were. That was kind of a hard lesson. Was I would go into something and assume, bad on me for getting a deliverable, and it wasn't what I thought it was. So as I started working more, I realized you have to be really a clear communicator and talk about expectations before anything begins.
Yeah, so much that I want to dig into just in that one answer, Aimee.
Yeah.
The two things that I really want to call out for listeners at this point is, it's two things that I think that they're your superpowers because you've gone through them. So thing number one is that you showed it's an iterative process. And I think this is the thing that most entrepreneurs get wrong, especially I talk about this so frequently within the scope of marketing, is that people think, oh, I'm going to put this marketing campaign together and it's going to work. Well, no, it's not going to work the first time. That is pretty much a guarantee. There are very few guarantees in business, but one of the few is that it's not going to work the first time. And so when you talk about developing your product with all your different prototypes and research, you had to iterate and reiterate and iterate. It is an iterative process. And the second thing, which goes hand in hand with that iterative process, that it sounds like you did an incredible job at, that your family probably thought you were a little bit crazy on, is that you pollinated from other products, from other industries, from other solutions. You said, hey, let me obsessively look at the handle of so many different products, because you have a handle and you got to figure that part out. You obsessively looked at materials found in other things. You took inspiration from those things. And for you listeners, I think it's really important to understand that pollination from other industries. I, as a podcast host, when I talk to a lawyer and hear how they work in their business, I think, oh my gosh, well, that could probably work in the world of tennis marketing. I pollinate those ideas. And Aimee, it sounds like you did an incredible job of all of that every step of the way. And I love your shout out for for Upwork is that it's attainable to get really good people in different fields. For example, the design, I don't know exactly who did your design, but the design is what immediately blew me away when I opened the Amazon package, is just how beautiful it is. Even the words on the side of the box are so intentional. And that's the intent that you keep talking about, is that nothing happens on a product or packaging by mistake. A human being put all of those things there. So I love that overview, Aimee. But getting to that point, having something and then going to market with it, two totally different games. You're actually playing a harder game than most listeners, because you don't just have to launch a business, you had to first create it. So walk us through that go-to-market strategy, because now you're sitting on a product and you're thinking, I want to get this into the hands of people. Where were you at that step in the process?
Okay, well, if we go back a step to the patent process, I think that was pretty key for me having confidence going to market, because like you said, I got inspiration from different things, but to create something, and I did a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube watching to understand everything. Every new step I took was new. So I had to educate myself. So I spent a lot of time doing that. But to have a product that's patented means that there's nothing else like it. So once I got that official, the timing just happened to be great. And so I had the confidence, first of all. The packaging was another company that I hired, and we worked together, and I probably drove them nuts, but I wanted to make sure that, every word was spelled correctly. Every space was perfect, because again, it's a representation of me, of my company. And I want people to know that they're getting a quality product. These are strategic decisions you have to make. You can do the ShamWow version, or you can do the, more serious customer. So you also have to think about, and I know you've talked about this before, who is my consumer? Who is my customer? And so once I kind of decided I didn't want to do this silly route, I wanted to do a more serious route and be really professional. That's when I went the way I did with the design. And then going to market. So I hired someone in Upwork that was fantastic with Amazon. And I say that Amazon is the intersection of a black hole and the Bermuda Triangle. You just get lost in there. There's so much to learn. I have so much respect for people that sell on Amazon. It just seems so simple. And so many people have said, oh, just do this. Oh, you can just do that. But it's really not just do. There's a lot of learning and mistakes. One thing you don't want to do with Amazon is make mistakes, because they can shut you down. It can be costly. So I decided when I went to market to stay under the Amazon umbrella 100%. Because it's just me. I have a low budget. I'm spending a lot of resources in the actual production of the product. And another thing people probably don't realize is, I had to become an importer. So I had to go through understanding what that means, and then paying for that. You pay taxes when you import. The shipping ports, there's so much to learn. So keeping everything under Amazon, I think, was a great strategic move for me, because you give up a little bit, but it's shipped by them. It's flown in by them. It's warehoused by them. And then obviously the fulfillment centers everybody knows about. But I took advantage of a newer system that they had called upstream storage. So again, part of the research and really educating yourself and understanding before you dive into something, what are your options? And so that was my best option, my most affordable, most efficient. It allowed me to be hands-off. I didn't want, 1,000 starter kits in my garage and then me spending time packaging them, mailing them out, because that doesn't free me up to sell and market and advertise and just establish myself as a brand. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Which we're definitely going to get there. I'm frantically jotting down notes because I'm like, there are so many. I feel like when we talk about inventors, people don't realize how much goes into it, because layered on top of, I said it before, layered on top of all the business stuff that we all need to do is a brand new freaking invention. Like, there's so much that goes into that. Aimee, before we transition into a lot of that stuff, I have to ask you this question. Feel free to share as much or as little as you want here as far as actual numbers go. But obviously a lot of people are hearing costs. They're hearing about companies that you had to hire, freelancers that you hired from Upwork. The other thing is you talk about importing and taxes and legal and compliance. There's so many different aspects to it. As far as that, and you don't have to say numbers, I totally don't blame you on that regard, but as far as where the costs are, what are the bulk of those costs? Are they all upfront? Are there costs that are staggered over time? What's the financial implications as far as inventing a product and bringing it to market?
Great question. I think it depends on how you want to approach your invention. So you have the people that you've partnered with, the company that helped me with the design and set me up with the packaging company, found what they thought was the right manufacturer for me, which has been a fantastic manufacturer. A lot of times, and my product is made in China, and a lot of people say, oh, it's made in China. I don't know about the materials. But again, I was insistent on a quality product. So a lot of samples back and forth. There's a lot of little costs like that, testing things, 3D prototypes. But probably the biggest one-time hit is actually purchasing your final product, the order. So I ordered, let's say, about 6,500 units, mostly the starter kit, and then I have refills that come in 2 sizes. So I didn't order as many of those because, again, another strategic thought was, people don't need the refills until they have the starter kit and they've burned through their drying heads that are included. So I wanted to not have too much stock there. And so that's probably the biggest hit. If you break down the cost of the product, I would say if you take all of the setup costs aside, because that to me is just part of setting up your business, running as a business. If you look at just the product, you have the manufacturing cost, you have the tax that you pay, you have the storage that you pay, and then the Amazon fees. The Amazon fees are actually really high. So I pay $7 to $8 per unit just on Amazon fees for them to store it, ship it, and all of that. So, but again, I chose to do that. And I'm really happy with that decision because I can only do so much in a day. So having that off my plate feels really good. So my profit margin isn't that great with Amazon, but I think if I were to replace Amazon with and go into wholesale, then that margin would go then to that would be the profit of the wholesaler. So it's kind of the same either way.
Yeah, thank you for those insights, Aimee. I love that transparency and appreciate it because it does give people a semblance of what that looks like. But the other thing I really want to point out, actually, there's 2 things I really want to point out. The first is which penny wise, pound foolish. You are here telling us as a business owner, making strategic decisions. Yeah, the cost is high here, but it enables fulfillment, delivery, shipping, all those logistics that are taken care of. So I think for us as people, and obviously money mindset, so much comes into play layered behind all of this, but a lot of people are penny wise, pound foolish. They're afraid to incur those costs, but you're saying, hey, if I want to grow, if I want to get it into the hands of people all over the world, this is necessary. The other thing I want to call out before I move into the next question is listeners are probably hearing this thinking, Aimee, you know so much about all of these things, but I want to remind them that a few years ago, you were a stay-at-home mom. You became an empty nester with your husband. You are not this by trade. You are this by practice. And so that's what I really want to call out for people is that this knowledge that you've accrued really quickly, by the way, it's because you're in it, you're living it, you're getting the reps in. And I think that's really important. The question I really want to ask you is about, and you touched on it a little bit earlier in our conversation, is about clarity, clearness in communication, clearness in your team, clearness in what you want. And to me, what stands out is it's interesting to me. An invention is a new product, something that doesn't exist, which you already found in your research. It doesn't exist, which means that you have to create demand for it. You need people to know that this now exists and here's the application. And to me, what's interesting about DryMeister is how easy you communicate it. It's right there on the top of your packaging. It's right at the top of your Amazon listing. Dries containers with hard to reach areas. In a really simple few words, that explains, here's the use case for it. Talk to us about what it's been like in inducing demand for a brand new product that people didn't know exists because it didn't exist.
Yes, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I've been selling since last fall, so it's just been 9 months, and I'm proud to say I'm selling every day. I am selling now in 49 states. South Dakota is holding out on me, but I will be excited to announce that when I reach all 50 states. That really is the hardest part is, again, low budget, have to be strategic. Where am I going to put my dollars? Where am I going to have the best reach? who is my demographic? So there's so many things to think about. And as numbers start to come in, surprisingly, I don't think I expected this. I would say my users are 50-50 male, female. So that was very encouraging, actually, because that gives me a broader audience. But like you said, the hard thing is nobody knows this exists. And I just think to myself, oh gosh, people are probably annoyed, struggling every day. And it's more than just water bottles. It's when you have a party, when you have champagne glasses, wine glasses, there's so many things that you can use it on. How do I get that out to everybody? And the broadness it's great because it is such a useful product, but it's also very hard because it's very hard to target within that broad market. So that's kind of where I am right now. I've experimented with a couple things. I've done 2 influencer campaigns, and I've been advertising here and there. So I'm still kind of testing out where, the best place to put my time and energy and money.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that transparency. And I think it speaks back to your inventor mindset, which is that iterative process. You're at the phase where you're just saying, hey, I'm just going to keep trying, because the more people that know about it, the better that we are. And the more people we're going to be able to get the hands in it. It's the blessing and the curse of a new invention is that people aren't searching for DryMeister. Why? Because a year ago it didn't exist. And so you need to build that initial demand up. Talk to us about some of those marketing channels, because being on Amazon, obviously people always think that like if you put it on Amazon, boom, you're going to sell millions of units overnight because there are already buyers there. But it still takes proactive marketing, proactive brand awareness on your behalf. You talked about influencer campaigns. What are some of those marketing channels that you're entertaining? Maybe some that you've tested? Have you got into paid ads? Talk to us about that process.
Yes. So the one influencer I did was someone that was on a news show. So I did that, and then the product is on her website. And then another one I just recently did was an Amazon influencer. She had has a Amazon storefront. So I did her live feed. And within advertising, there are so many choices to make. Do you want to do a story for Instagram? Do you want to do a story? Do you want to do a post? Do you want to do a story and a post? So at some point, you just have to wing it, pick something and go for it. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And I would say for me, the influencer route has not been beneficial. And again, I think it's because nobody knows this product exists. And so it's hard to kind of start from zero. A lot of the things that I read about advertising talk about who your competitor is. And I don't have a competitor. I'm more of an accessory to other products that exist. So if you go to my website, it'll say, the others clean, we dry. We kind of finish the job. So a lot of it is product education, which you can do in ads. And back to your comment about the design of the box, I really wanted the box to communicate what the product does just by looking at the box without even reading a word. And so that took, like you said, iterations, messing around with different things. You have to talk about the cost of making that box, the cutouts, how it's glued. There's so many things. But I think in the end, the packaging hit the target. And I am a total sucker for good packaging. I love good packaging. It always draws me into a product. So as a consumer, I had to put myself in a consumer mindset and what would appeal to me. So that was that decision. So I use that now as part of my advertising. I show off the box, and I think that's helped to communicate what my product does. But I haven't done Facebook and Instagram yet, which I'm really itching to do. It's kind of like the Amazon world. It's very hard to get yourself set up as an advertiser, a business advertiser on all these platforms. Like you said, it sounds so easy. Oh, you can just do this and just do that. There really is no just this and just that. Everything you do, you have to take one step at a time. Sometimes being approved for something takes 8 steps. I just had an issue with Google Ads, for example, and from all the information I submitted, my ads were running for a while, and then for some reason it got flagged because they didn't realize that my company, Meister Solutions, owns DryMeister. So I had to then pull up it's a registered trademark now. So I had to send them proof of my registered trademark that my company owns that brand. So I've had a lot of that with Amazon and different advertising channels, which goes back to, being organized. You have to pull up information every day. You have to prove yourself every day. You have to prove who you are, what you do, what you own. And so having everything at your fingertips has really benefited me. And that's just who I am too as a person. I know I'm new at this, but that's just my personality. That's the way I raised my kids. I run the household. You have to have the tools that you need. You have to be organized. Life brings you curveballs every day. So if you can just stay grounded and organized, then you'll be ready for what comes your way. For example, the Google ad situation. Beyond that is mostly Amazon ads. That's a whole nother world. And again, that's the gal that's helped me through Upwork. She's been so helpful in understanding that whole ecosystem. And it really is an ecosystem. It's not like you post something like you do on Instagram and just let it go. That's very intentional. There's a lot of layers to running Amazon ads. So that's been actually very interesting and fun, but very task oriented.
Yeah, Aimee, so many ingredients inside of that answer that you just shared with us that I absolutely love. I think that really shows why you are a brilliant inventor and why you are for sure going to be a brilliant entrepreneur even moving forward, is because of the way that you think about these things. And I think we really need to we need to scream from the rooftops that message that you had about there's nothing really in business that you just do. That is what we did an episode about this called Uninformed Optimism, where a lot of people think before you're in it, they just think, oh yeah, just run an ad and you'll start selling it. It's not the reality. So I love the fact that you say there are no things that you just do. It's so much that goes into it. Aimee, I've got to ask you this because I'm obviously a big fan of your product already. And I know that everyone in the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur audience, you've got a worldwide community of people who are rooting for your product just now and moving forward. I can't wait to see the growth of it. But I want to ask you about those growth plans because you're in it, all these different ingredients. So much of our conversation is just a constant reminder about all the different moving pieces involved in running and building and growing a business. Aimee, how far out are you thinking about your expansion plans? Are you targeting retail environments? Are you targeting wholesale? What is that roadmap for you? How far does that roadmap go versus how much of it is, hey, let's hone in on Amazon, let's crush it there, and then we'll think about the rest in the future?
So I think you just described where I am right now. I'm just right at that fork in the road. I'm going to continue with Amazon. I'm looking at getting into retail, which is a whole nother animal that I'm learning about, watching a lot of YouTube videos, talking to different people, talking to different storage facilities, because another strategic decision I made was to keep Amazon completely separate from the retail operation. There's too many confusing details there that I won't get into, but so that's my plan right now, is to get into retail. And I launched my product last November, so I really didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of Christmas and the holiday season. So that's kind of where I am right now. It's August 1st, Christmas is coming. That's a huge opportunity to sell. It's also a more expensive opportunity to sell because Amazon raises their prices for everything during that time of year. So I have to factor that in as well. But that is my goal right now, is to get into retail. I have other different versions of the same product that's always in the back of my head. Some people say, it'd be great if it could fit into like even a smaller opening. So right now it can fit into an opening that's 1 inch wide or greater, and that's pretty small. But I have plans to maybe make one that's even smaller. But again, back to the production part of it is, then you're spending money on manufacturing documents and molds. So that is something that was a big investment. I had to pay for the manufacturer to create molds. Now I own the molds. They had to create the printing rollers for the refill packaging. Now I own that. So everything I decide to do from here, if I decide to do something new with the product, it's going to be expensive, and I have to be prepared for that. And that's why I'm really trying to just bring awareness right now. That's really my biggest hurdle, is just making people aware that it's here. And then my next move will be hopefully to get into retail. I don't know if I'll be able to do it by Christmas, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, Aimee, I so love and admire your transparency in the way that you share with us your inner thoughts about all of this stuff, including I love how you gave a shout out to, hey, when you need to, you hop on YouTube and you're constantly learning. It keeps coming back to that iteration, but I want to call out for listeners. It's one of my favorite quotes ever. The greatest resource is resourcefulness. And Aimee, you are getting after it every single day. There's so much to this. You've listened to this show before, so you know that I always like to close these sessions by giving my guest the hard job, which is summing up with all these different things that we talked about today. What's an action for all those people who have ever said, I have an idea and this product would be amazing. This is my $1 million idea, but they don't take action on it. What is your best advice for them or an action that they should take to start making this a reality? Because Aimee, a few years in and you have gone from someone who didn't have a product or a business to now someone who has both and is making moves. So what's your best piece of advice with all the things that we talked about here today?
I would say back to the resourcefulness, use what's around you. Use relationships. That's really a big one. Use people that you know that do something in the realm of what you're doing. And then also I would say make a plan and stick to the plan. And if you feel convicted about things, hold on to your convictions and your gut feeling about things, because there's a lot of noise out there and a lot of people that might try to distract you from what you're doing or persuade you to try to do something a different way. But if you feel it's right and you know in your heart it's right, stick with that and grind every day, but give yourself grace. So there's times when you max out. There's times when, I'm not creative and I think, okay, I just need to take a break from this. I'm still old school. Sometimes I'm paper and pen. So however you have to grind, however you're most efficient, I would say grind every day. That's really what you have to do. And don't deviate from your plan, because when you deviate from your plan, things go south pretty quickly. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice.
Yes, such good advice for every single wantrepreneur and entrepreneur out there, whether you have a physical product or you're just running an online business. Such good advice that applies to each and every one of us. It's such a good reminder, Aimee. Thank you so much for sharing that insight with us. I know, obviously, I've been touting your product here today. We've talked so much about DryMeister and how awesome it is. Listeners are going to want to check out your stuff, your company, your product for sure. Talk to them about where they should go from here. All those good links, share it with them.
Well, now that you know the whole backstory, you can go to DryMeister.com and you can see the product there. You can just search DryMeister on Amazon. On my website, there's all my social channels there, so you can see, kind of what I'm doing in that world. But yep, DryMeister.com, that's the best place.
Yes, listeners, you know the drill from here. All those links, including Aimee's website, as well as finding the product directly on Amazon, are down in the show notes. And I think what would be really cool, because I know that all of you worldwide listeners are going to be rooting for Aimee's success with her product. If you guys pick it up on Amazon, drop me an email with a picture of you holding it. I'll forward it along to Aimee. I think it'd be so cool if the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur community shows up in force with an awesome product that really makes our lives easier. Pretty much everyone benefits from it. Aimee, you called out that it's both men and women. I, as a 34-year-old man, I find uses as well with the amount of sports that I play. Water bottles, that's why I keep harping on that. It's my least favorite thing. So everybody could definitely benefit from it. It's such an improved quality of life product. Aimee, I so respect what you've done, what you're doing. I can't wait to follow your success. So thanks so much for coming on to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun.